Sono in compagnia del professor Charles G. Russell, al quale farò una serie di domande. La prima domanda è per tracciare la sua storia personale con la semantica generale. Come ha incontrato la semantica generale? Che cosa lo ha attratto fin dall'inizio? Professor Russell, how did you encounter general semantics? And what of general semantics attracted you at the very beginning?
First, I took a formal class when I was starting on my master's degree. It was simply called General Semantics, and we read Krzyzewski, and I read Krzyzewski, and I read again, and it was like walking through heavy mud. It was not easy to comprehend. And slowly things began to make a little bit of sense. And as I was able to take what I learned from him and to make it my own, that is to come up with terms that I was comfortable with, then I thought, there's probably something here. There's something I have never before encountered. And I think I felt the same as my students over the last 40 years, because once they had taken a class like this, usually in their senior year in college, the inevitable question was, why have I waited this long to learn something this valuable? They felt cheated that they had not learned it much earlier in their academic careers.
What is the revelation in general semantics?
I think it's partially when you become what I think Krzyzewski calls self-aware, aware of awareness, aware that the world out there is not there in a very real sense. It's in here. It's a world that I bring into existence through language and culture. And one of the problems that I think I failed to understand until I first started studying general semantics was that, at least in English, and as I understand in many other languages, I talk as if I'm talking about what's out there. I cannot do that. In the United States, we have an Indian tribe, the Hopi Indian tribe, and they have a language that prohibits talking about things out there. It forces them to talk about themselves. For example, I can say, this cover is red or orange. That says I am talking about this. The Hopi have a language that would prohibit that. They would have to say, I see, or I notice, or I perceive the color red in this. That's a statement about me, not about that. That's a profound difference in the way we conceptualize the world and consequently the way we then talk about that world. When Mr. Clinton was president, Madeleine Albright was his Secretary of State. You may remember the name.
Yes.
And she was quoted in the press as saying, I will tell it the way it is. That's impossible. She can tell it the way she sees it. I can tell it the way I see it. I cannot tell it as if there's something out there to be told.
What are the basic principles of general semantics?
These are my terms, not Krzyzewski's.
Yes, your terms.
I see the realization that allness is a terrible fallacy. We talk in language as if Citroens are good, Fords are bad, Peugeots are this, and Chevrolets are something else, without any attempt to say, but I am only talking about that which I know firsthand. So if I buy a brand of automobile and it performs well or poorly, that brand is good or bad. That's an allness statement. Yeah. Once I learn the invitation, the temptation to think and speak that way, I can back away from it. I can say the two Fords I own performed well or badly. That's all I know about Fords. I have no business talking about anything else. So the allness concept would be to me something very fundamental.
So the first step in general semantics is to take responsibility for one's own definitions of the world and not sell your definition as the definition. Is it correct?
Or even as an adequate definition. It's just mine. I could be wrong. I probably will be wrong.
From this standpoint, every statement of value has to be co-constructed with your partner.
Well, yes.
Or with the world.
Or with an awareness that my language and culture drive me to this seeing, to this awareness.
Is this the beginning of radical constructivism or complete relativization of the world?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. Going back to Krzyzewski, it's the beginning of awareness of awareness. Because once I have this, I can no longer function the way I previously did. So that would be one cornerstone or one important point. Another cornerstone or important concept to me is the realization that dichotomies exist in language much more readily than they do in the world out there. In English, we can say it's good, it's bad, as if there's nothing in between. In English, we talk about males and females, and yet if you know anything about anatomy, there's more than males and females. So even when it comes to gender, there's no real dichotomy. I used to challenge my students to name a genuine, out there, observable dichotomy. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. Once I start thinking beyond dichotomies, I like this soup, I don't like that soup. It says nothing about all of the other soups. It's just, this is the way I perceive things. And if I can refrain from thinking and talking and forcing on you a dichotomous view of the world, I think I function better, much better. David Borden, who was president of the International Society for General Semantics before I became president, was very fond of and supportive of something called E-prime communication. You no doubt heard about it. And I read an article about it, and it struck me immediately, having studied general semantics, as here is a profound way to totally change the way I'm interacting with my world. And so I've published a few books and some articles in E-prime, which basically takes that Hopi Indian view, and it says, I no longer will think and talk as if I'm talking about what's out there. I'll simply acknowledge this is the way I find my world. This is the way I interpret my world. And that makes an enormous difference in what I do and how I think and how I interact with other people.